Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This episode is brought to you in part by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
Kyle, I know you have a story, but before I forget, I want to let listeners know that Friedrich's Ataxia News is hosting a live virtual roundtable event for FA patients and caregivers coming up Wednesday, November 1st. You've heard me talk about Friedrich's Ataxia News. They're the folks I write a column for. Fellow columnist and FA patient Matt LaFleur and fellow columnist and FA patient Kendall Harvey, both who have been guests on our show, and Matthew, who was a part of the initial team that got this podcast off the ground. They're going to be having a conversation with an expert in the FA field and an expert in financial management. That expert doctor is David Lynch, who Kyle talks about often. Together, this group is going to be talking about the latest diagnostic process and treatments for FA. You'll have the opportunity to hear from FA patients and caregivers. You'll learn about resources available to help you manage the financial aspects of FA and, of course, get inspired by the stories of hope and resilience from the FA community. You can find a link to register for the event in our show notes. Again, the event is free, is virtual, and is coming up Wednesday, November 1st, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Kyle, back to you.
Sean, I was in line at Chipotle the other day. I really didn't feel like making anything for dinner, so I was like, all right, let me just get a burrito and done with it, right?
Yeah.
So I go through the line, and the guy's wrapping it up, finishing up my burrito, and the guy in front of me, who is there by himself getting his burrito to eat in the restaurant, I had already decided that I was just going to grab mine and go. I had a few things to take care of at home, and it was getting late. I mean, it was 7:30.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, geez, so late. Wow, you better hurry.
Yeah, so he is about to pay for his, and he turns around and he's like, I'll have this and whatever he's having. And so he was going to pay for my meal. And my very first instinct was the instinct I had about, I don't know, whatever it was, 12 years ago. We've talked about it a few times, yeah. Right? When someone offered to pay for my groceries.
I don't need your money.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need your help, babe. And then I caught myself. I was like, no, this is an opportunity. This guy wants to do something nice. And actually what he said was that somebody did something nice for me today, and I told them I would pay it forward. So I want to pay for your burrito. All right, cool. And I was proud of I was just noticing the difference in my reaction because we've talked about this exact situation.
Yep.
And I was able to, in the moment, observe the situation and be like, you know what? We talked about this, and I talked about how I wanted to react next time, you know? Yeah. So it was kind of a neat thing. I mean, the guy was nice. If I would have had more time, I probably would have stayed and had my burrito with him and talked to him. He seemed like a nice person. But the thing that I kind of regret is later I was like, oh, I should have told him that I was going to pay it forward because I will. But like I didn't make sure that he felt good about me.
Sure.
Paying it forward, right? So, Anyway,
How long ago was that?
I don't know, 3 days ago.
And you haven't paid it forward yet? I'm just saying, don't forget. Because maybe you didn't commit to him, but you just committed to me and a bunch of people listening.
Yep, that's a good reminder. Maybe I'll have to go through the Starbucks drive-through and pay for the person behind me or something like that.
Sounds kind of cheap. I mean, $14 burrito, $5 Starbucks. No, I'm just playing. Well, that's amazing. I love that. That kind of stuff. It makes the world go around, right?
Yeah.
And
I agree.
although there's always that question in the back of our heads, like, why are they doing this? You know, is it out of pity? Or was it just out of kindness? I think if we just tell ourselves this out of kindness, more often than not, we benefit. It's free food. Or whatever. So, that's awesome. Yep. I'm glad you caught yourself and didn't offend this man who was just trying to be nice.
The following message is brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
Hey, Kyle, you would say that there's no time like the present, right?
Yeah, of course. And?
Well, you know, like, now is the time. Be in the now. The moment is now.
Yeah, I would say focusing on the now is pretty important. But what are you getting at?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I just want to let our community know that Skyclarys omeprazole 50 milligram capsules is now available.
Of course. The first and only FDA-approved prescription medicine for Friedreich ataxia in patients 16 years and older is now available.
So if you or a loved one has FA, be sure to talk to your doctor to see if Skyclarys is right for you.
Now, dude. The time is now.
And to stay updated on all things Skyclarys, visit Skyclarys.com.
Before taking Skyclarys, tell your healthcare provider about your medical conditions and medicines you take. Skyclarys may cause serious side effects, including an increase in liver enzymes in your blood, increase in a blood protein which tells how well your heart is working, and changes in cholesterol levels. Your doctor will test these levels before and during treatment with Skyclarys. The most common side effects of Skyclarys include increased liver enzymes, headache, nausea, stomach pain, tiredness, diarrhea, and muscle pain. Call your doctor if you have any side effects. For additional information about Skyclarys, please see the full prescribing information and patient product information at www.skyclarys.com. This ad was brought to you by Reata Pharmaceuticals.
Sean, for my quote of the week, I want to share a quote from Barack Obama.
Who?
And I feel like it's been said in quite a few different ways, but change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. Mm-hmm. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. It's been said, I mean, it's obviously just like be the change you want to see in the world.
It's a valid point that I'm glad, as you mentioned, it's been said 100 different ways. Because, unfortunately, probably what more people lean on or hear is the person, right? And depending on your political point of view, you may not give any credit to this person or that person. But the reality of it is, if we want to see the world change, it's up to you and I. We gotta take an active role in how things play out in the years and the time that we get to spend on this planet. So I do love that quote, whoever said it.
Right. Yep, exactly. And that's the quote of the week. Sean, as we know, there are many challenges in life with rare disease. And how do we address these challenges? Oftentimes, it's not straightforward, but advocacy is a big way to do it, to address these challenges. But what do we mean when we say advocacy? For example, we talk about the challenges in travel for somebody with a disability. We talk about that topic all the time.
Sure.
But how do we make changes? How do we make things better? And I think part of it is just by talking about it, right? We post on social media. We do a blog post or write a column. We even sometimes talk to our legislators about making changes in the laws that will make things better. Sure. And all of these things, I think, are advocacy. Advocacy comes in so many different forms, and it's all valid and it's all good.
Yep. I like where you're going with this conversation today, and I appreciate you bringing it up, because a lot of people, and I've been there before, you think, well, I'm not talented in that aspect, so I can't do that thing. Or I don't have a voice for radio or podcast, so I can't do that thing.
Right.
I don't know where to begin. I don't have the equipment. And I think we all do it to one degree or another. And the reality of it is, what we hope to achieve in this short conversation is encouraging everybody that there are so many different forms of advocacy. It's not just about having a megaphone or being in the spotlight or on stage or whatever it may be. In fact, you ran through a list of a couple: legislation, blogging, blah, 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 art, music. The way people just decorate their house on a certain rare disease day or a certain focus day, or the way they paint their sidewalk I don't know, the lemonade cookie stand in the front yard. There are so many different ways everybody can advocate for whatever is important to them. We just happen to come at it through the angle of rare disease, but there's a lot.
Or, think about it as simple as just having a conversation and trying to figure out either what you think or maybe informing somebody else. I think that's advocacy, even if it's just one-on-one.
Sure. Yep.
I think the key is that, I don't know, maybe one of the ways I think about it is what is not advocacy, what is not going to make change, is if we stay silent. If we just suffer in silence and don't make our voices heard at all, even to our family or friends, then nothing's going to happen, right?
That's good. A long time ago, we interviewed, or we had somebody on the show. Do you remember Joey or Joe Such?
Oh, yeah.
So I follow him on Instagram, and he had a post not too long ago of him as a young boy. And he was, I think he was like on the side of a dock or a lake. He was holding a fishing pole and a fish that he just caught, and he was very young. And if you've seen pictures of him, for those who listen and maybe follow us, he's got some visible challenges, and his arms are like cement, and they're in a awkward position.
Right.
So anyway, that was true even at this age. I don't know. Well, I'll just say he's 8 or 12 and somewhere in there in this photo. And the caption, he talked about how he hated taking pictures as a kid because he felt like everybody always said, "Oh, scoot over, Joey. You're not in this picture." Or, they would take pictures when he would walk away to go to the bathroom or something because they didn't want this vision or this persona visible in the pictures. And what you were talking about just triggers, because now in his, I want to say he's in his 30s, he's constantly producing pictures and YouTube videos and podcasts because he's he's just got to a point where it's like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to use my voice and I'm going to advocate while I can. And nothing really seems to matter to him in terms of the challenge or the hardship or the inability or the struggle of this, that, and the other. And you're right. He has chosen not to be silent. And he's making a name for himself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that example because he's not on a soapbox, like, yelling from a, bullhorn.
Like I do every now and then.
Well, I mean, yes.
Not a lie.
He's doing his thing. And he's not causing any harm, right? Or making a disturbance. He's doing what he needs to do. And that's the way he does his advocacy and speaks his voice. Now he's like, you know what? I'm in control. I want a photo. Let's do this.
Yep.
A lot of times we get so worked up about things, and you see it all the time. I mean, just in that example, I feel like it would be easy to get worked up about not being included in photos. In Joe's case, though, he just takes it and goes, whatever, I'm just going to take a photo because that's the way I want it. But it doesn't have to be so emotional, and you don't have to get mean. You don't have to get loud, right? You can do your thing, and that's the part of your advocacy.
I feel like you're speaking directly to me right now because, as you know, and even recently, there are times where, I take it with a grain of salt. There are other times I am loud. I'm really upset. And I've realized over the years, every interaction helps inform someone about something. And how I show up matters. And it always impacts how the message is received. If I'm patient but stern, making it a point that there's an issue here, but I'm not mean about it, I feel like more people respect that. And they're more understanding of just how difficult it is. When, and I've been on both sides of the fence. When I have a guest or a customer or somebody yelling at me about something that went wrong, I'm less likely to be empathetic and to fix it. I'm more on defense.
Yep.
And, for me, we joke about it sometimes. My gut reaction is almost always from a place of frustration or anger.
Yeah.
Yet over the years, I've been the change I want to see to an extent. and I've realized that being mad and expressing it at that level isn't always the most effective. I do want to add, I think it's necessary sometimes. I think there are times you have to, fight your way through. So I think about Effie.
Yeah.
And other rare disease parents that really have to put up a fight on behalf of their child. So I'm all for it.
Right.
At times. I'm not saying it's never allowed, but it's just not always the best option.
Right. And that's a hard thing, too. It's trying to figure out what tools to use in this situation, right? Whether it requires raising a voice and getting a little angry or whether it's just a conversation.
Something else comes to mind for me, Kyle, when we talk about advocacy. I used to be one of those folks that always thinks of fundraiser. Your advocacy is for the sake of raising money. And too often, at least in my experience, those two are automatically assumed to run together or to be the primary way of advocating. And although it's important, especially when you talk about research and rare disease and the need for money, there's a legitimate need there. But it's not always about fundraising.
Right.
I believe if you are someone that has the ability to go out into public and you live with a visible disability, that alone is a form of advocacy. Every time someone sees you or a family that is quote-unquote different, to me that's the most powerful form of advocacy, because in a sense, it's how we say, yeah, you know what, some things about my life suck, or some things about my life are hard, but those things don't dictate who I am or what I can do. I can... If you have the ability to still go out to the grocery store, or run to Starbucks, or, go actually visit a doctor in person, everybody that sees you, it's challenging their perception of disability.
Yeah.
And I believe that to be a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, thinking back to Joe Such again, like, he can't walk. He can hardly move, but he's, we interviewed him. He's a great person, and he loves going out and challenging people's perceptions of disability, like you say. And I think that's a really good point.
Hey, Kyle, I'm reminded of a piece of the conversation with Joey in reference to a YouTube video he created. He wanted to go, I think him and just a friend, they were going to go to a lighthouse on the beach for a couple hours just to enjoy the day. And the video captures how much effort goes into that alone. He can't eat, quote unquote, regular food. He's got to have there's just so much that goes into him leaving his house.
Right.
And in doing so, he's advocating for himself. So anyway, I don't necessarily think Joe was intended to be such a big part of today's episode, but I do want to remind listeners to check out Joe and the work he's doing and his YouTube channel. You can go back and hear us interview Joey in episode 178.
Sean, when I think of advocacy, I also think of the obvious. We've both been in meetings with legislators for Advocacy Day through Every Life Foundation. I've also done a few things through FARA and the National Ataxia Foundation for International Ataxia Awareness Day, where we meet with legislators or a legislative assistant and talk about the issues that are important for us. And this one is really relevant. We just talked about it during Advocacy Day a few weeks ago, is that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, has to be renewed. Like, the last time it was renewed was like 30 years ago or something like that. Anyway, they're putting all these things about accessibility in it because it's being renewed, like, at the moment. So being able to go into that meeting or that series of meetings and talk about the FAA and the accessibility stuff that's in the new formed version of it, I think it was a really powerful thing. I also think about the fact that those meetings are like 20 minutes long. And it's hard to think that you're really striking a chord with somebody or you're really making an impact in such a brief conversation. But you never know where it's going to lead. You never know who's going to follow up. And, we're trusting that these people are taking what we're saying and being like, you know what, this is my constituent. I need to, be concerned with what they're concerned with. So anyway, I just in thinking about advocacy, thinking about that process and being involved in it and not solving the issue right away. We're not going to come to a conclusion on the phone or in the meeting that day, but making our voice heard, making them know what we care about is what it's all about.
Yep. I love the point you made. You never know who's watching, who's listening, or who's being moved by a 2-minute interaction and who might follow up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kyle, again, I like this topic, and I'm glad that we're calling attention to the many different ways we all can advocate for ourselves, for each other, for our families. And I hope listeners are encouraged today in their advocacy efforts, however and wherever that might occur and happen and look.
Sean, we both know some very effective advocates in the rare disease world, or maybe just in our lives, people that refuse to be silent, and they're effective about it. You know, they're not emotional or loud or annoying.
Yeah.
All right, fine, sometimes they are. But I am thankful for those folks that refuse to be silent. And so as we're thinking about gratitude, I want to move us into thank you notes. Who do you have to thank today?
My thank you note actually correlates with something you just said. Lots of different advocacy groups and people and organizations that we both know. So I'm going to say thank you to one that we're both familiar with, Living in the Light, and specifically their From Patient to Person project, where they are finding ways to illuminate rare disease patient stories in order to share information, everyday challenges, and what life is like for such patients and families with the biotech industry. They recently sent a photographer and a videographer out to me, and they allowed me to be one of those stories that they're working on. So an incredible effort that they're working on just to highlight patients that are up against some difficult stuff.
Yep, I like it. Great work that they're doing. I want to thank the cashier at the Wawa that I went to the other day.
Wow.
And for those of you on the West Coast, Wawa is the AM/PM of the East Coast. You think that's fair, Sean?
I don't know, because my perception of Wawa for you East Coasters does not correlate or match with my perception of AM/PM. For me, when I was hanging out in Pennsylvania for a month, I was all about my cappuccino or my coffee, and Starbucks wasn't as popular. Everybody talked about Dunkin' Donuts and Wawa coffee. And out here on the West Coast, nobody talks about AM/PM coffee.
That's true.
So
That's
maybe
true.
as popular or in terms of lots of locations. But when I think of Wawa, I think, man, you East Coasters love their coffee, and that's weird to me.
Well, you know
It's
what?
a gas station.
I think it's I think it's a good point, because I think we're talking about quality here, and the quality at Wawa is pretty high.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that the quality at AM/PM, or a gas station in general, is not necessarily all that high, but you can count on it at Wawa.
Yeah.
So now that we have that,
Yeah, anyway, I could talk about it all day, but go on with your thank you note.
so I went into Wawa for lunch the other day, and I was checking
See,
out.
that right there is weird. Nobody on the West Coast ever
That's
goes to
true.
a gas station just to buy lunch.
Yeah, and I don't think people they sell gas at Wawa, but it's not really a gas station.
Okay.
It's a Wawa.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm checking out, and the guy goes, "Hey, what's your name?" And I'd seen this guy, I don't know, 20 times. And he's like, "You come in here all the time. I don't even know your name." And it was just really nice to have a little connection, right? Usually it's like, "All right, how much do I owe? Okay, here's my card. All right, see you later." And so it was just a little humanity in the situation that I appreciate.
Yeah, I love that. And especially coming from a gas station. Because that kind of energy just doesn't exist in very many gas stations. So.
Well, but once again, I'm going to say it's not really a gas station. It's a Wawa.
All right.
And I think that they're on some list as a really good place to work. They're not on the same list that Nugget's on.
Probably not the same list that maybe an AMPM is on.
Right.
Not that, I'm not hating on AMPM. I don't mean to disparage.
No, that's true. We're just comparing, I guess. But anyway, thank you to my Wawa cashier. Sean, thank you for this sometimes meandering conversation today. This episode is brought to you in part by Reata Pharmaceuticals. If you enjoyed what you heard, or if you didn't like what you heard, we'd love for you to share it with a friend. Go on to your podcast app, whatever one you use, and leave a review, and please subscribe. Until next time, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.